Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is week 7 of the college football season 2018. This is Real Big Ten Football Talk +1 with Chris. I am Chris, and let's begin this week, shall we? In this particular matchup, this is Minnesota visiting number 3 ranked Buckeyes of Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio. This is a series that has not been kind to Minnesota in recent years. These two teams don't play each other a whole lot. I mean, they're both in the Big Ten Conference. They've both played each other off and on for the last 80 years, but they don't play each other every year. Normally because they're in different, before the Big Ten was different divisions, Ohio State still didn't really play them that often, which I don't really understand. But in recent years, Minnesota's in the West, Ohio State's in the East, and if you know anything about how conferences work, you know that two teams from different divisions don't play each other every year. It's usually every other year or every 3 years at the most. And I believe Minnesota and Ohio State play each other every 2 to 3 years on average. If we look at the last 5 meetings, you'll see why I say history has not been kind to the Golden Gophers when it comes to playing this Ohio State Buckeyes team. The last 5 meetings, Ohio State has dominated this meeting. The last time they met was in 2015. Minnesota lost Ohio State 28-14 in Columbus. 2014, Ohio State traveled to Minnesota. They were both ranked, which is shocking. And Ohio State beat them 31-24. I watched that game. It was a very well-fought game for Minnesota. In fact, I was kind of pulling for Minnesota here and there. Not to say I'm a fan of either of these teams particularly, but it was a good game, and I love good football games. But Ohio State did pull it out 31-24. 2010, Ohio State nearly knocked Minnesota off the face of the earth. 52-10 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 2009, again, Minnesota this time going to Columbus, and they did lose 38-7. 2008, same result. Minnesota went to Columbus and lost again, this time 34-21. For this year it could be Minnesota's year. It could not. God knows Minnesota does not look good on paper. But, as I've said in my post-game show last week, paper doesn't always tell the story, but I apologize for the background noise there. Air conditioner. But, like I said, the paper does tell a story by and large, but not always. There are some factors to consider here. For one, as you can see, Minnesota hasn't done well against Ohio State in the last 5 meetings. Well, like I said, I always go back to this as an example. Kentucky hadn't beaten Florida in Gainesville since the 70s. Since 10, 12 years before I was born. I'm 31. A long time. And they did beat Florida in Gainesville this year. So, Minnesota could do it. But, like Kentucky, history is not on the Golden Gophers' side here. Let's look at who they played this year. Again, on paper, Minnesota doesn't look very great. The one team they played that they beat that was a pretty good win was Fresno State. Why do I say that? Fresno State did beat UCLA, but unfortunately for the Bruins, a lot of teams have beaten them this year. But that does look good for Minnesota, seeing as how Fresno State did end up beating the Bruins of UCLA. But the two teams that Minnesota has played that have better records and that are in the Big Ten Conference, they've lost 2. Minnesota is 0-2 in the Big Ten. Not really a threat for the West right now, since they are saying 0-2. That can change. Still early in the Big Ten season, but doesn't look good for them. Ohio State, their resume looks pretty solid, as they did beat TCU in a neutral site, beat Penn State on the road, in a whiteout, in prime time, and they did somehow come out with victory. Ohio State is 6-0, as it shows here. Minnesota is 3-2. The 6-0 record with the teams they've beaten is why Ohio State's ranked 3rd, and the teams that Minnesota has beaten and the ones they've lost to is why they're staying 3-2 unranked in the AP Top 25. Now we look at how these teams stack up against, or for the run and against the run. Minnesota, not very good. Under 45 yards per game, that's 95th ranked nationally. Against the run, pretty solid. But, again, look who Minnesota's played. Look at who Ohio State's played. Look at the ranks again. Yeah, Minnesota's only allowed 127.4 yards per game. That ranks 39th. These teams they played, I don't know their offensive stats off the top of my head, but I would bet those teams don't run the ball great themselves. So Minnesota's done well against teams that don't run the ball great anyway. Doesn't really bode well for them in my book. Ohio State runs the ball 201 yards per game, 41st nationally. Not bad, especially against the teams they played. Penn State in particular, who is pretty good against the run anyway. And Ohio State has allowed 143 rushing yards per game, 56 nationally. Pretty good, considering their schedule. You have to think about the schedule when looking at these stats. You can't just look at the stats and say, okay, on paper, Minnesota's going to crush, is going to stop Ohio State on the run. They're going to shut down the running game. Not so fast, boys and girls. You have to look at the schedule in addition to the stats. That's how you can compare the two rationally and objectively. Maybe you're a fan of the Golden Gophers. Maybe you're a fan of Ohio State. Still, you have to be as unbiased as you can be when looking at these stats based on who they played. Passing. Again, Minnesota, not great. In fact, pretty bad. 196.4 yards per game. That's 99th nationally. Ohio State, on the other hand. This is why, in my humble opinion, why Ohio State is 6-0. 364.7 passing yards per game. This is not J.T. Barrett's Buckeye team any longer. They can throw the ball. That is 3rd nationally. You know who it's behind? 2 air raid teams, Texas Tech and Washington State. It's pretty good, considering Ohio State is not an air raid offense per se, but when they throw the ball, they throw it pretty daggone good and efficiently. Sacks allowed. Minnesota allows Nate Stanley to get hit too often. For those of you that don't know, Nate Stanley is Minnesota's starting quarterback. He has gotten sacked 13 times. That's 88th nationally. Against the pass, Minnesota, pretty good. 196.8 yards per game. That ranks 36th nationally. Again, might I remind you, they have played New Mexico State, Fresno State, Iowa, Maryland, and, my God, I'm sorry, my memory eludes me. Look, Miami of Ohio. Again, Minnesota has done well defensively against, I don't want to be mean, but comparatively weaker opponents that Ohio State has played. How's Ohio State done against the pass? 222 yards allowed per game through the air, 60th nationally. Pretty good considering who they played. TCU in particular. Ohio State's allowed 8 sacks per game. Dwayne Haskins has been on the turf 8 times this year with the ball in his hand. That's pretty daggone good. 31st nationally considering he played a very tough Penn State defense 2 weeks ago. Now let's look at the offensive efficiency. Minnesota, 33 minutes per game they hold onto the ball. It's pretty good. 108 first downs. In 1 game fewer than Ohio State. It's okay. 3rd down efficiency tells the story. In fact, I believe this tells the story why Minnesota has those 2 losses. 34% 3rd down efficiency. That's bad. They've turned the ball over 11 times to Ohio State 6. Again, these are just raw stats. Minnesota's played 1 game fewer than Ohio State. It has turned the ball over 5 more times. Not good. Minnesota's touchdown percentage, 67%. They score touchdowns 67% of the time they get inside the 20 on offense. That's pretty poor. Ohio State, 76%. Is not great either. But, again, who they played. Red zone scoring percentage, 81% for Minnesota. That's 92nd nationally. Ohio State, 83%. That's 81st nationally. But, seeing as I've watched a couple of Ohio State's games, they do like to go for it a lot on 4th down inside the 20. You go for it inside the 20, you don't get it. Anybody who watches football understands that when you go for it on 4th down, you don't get the opponent gets the ball on that spot, which means your red zone scoring percentage goes down. But you win the field position battle. So it's kind of a give and take there. Where Minnesota really thrives and where this could help them in winning this game, they don't commit penalties very often. They only, on average, leave 39.8 yards on the field. 39.8 yards is pretty daggone good. In fact, I don't think that's going to lead you to losing many games, only leaving 39.8 yards on the field. Ohio State, I've said this in previous videos. They need to be careful about the penalties. 8.5 per game. 80 yards. That 80 yards could lead them to lose a game this year. When they're playing those tougher opponents coming up. The Michigan States of the world. Maybe this Minnesota team. Michigan at the end of the year. These penalties will catch up to the Buckeyes. You can be rest assured of that if they don't clean it up. That's offense. Defense. Defense. Minnesota's only forced 8 turnovers this year. They've given up 11. It's a negative turnover margin. Not good when your defense isn't consistently getting you the ball in good field position and you're constantly turning the ball over. Hurting, making it tougher for your defense on offense. But Minnesota has gotten 5 interceptions to Ohio State's 4 this year. Minnesota's recovered 3 fumbles. Ohio State's recovered 6. Ohio State, when they wrap up, they tackle pretty well. And they also get plenty of sacks. Ohio State's gotten 22 to Minnesota's 8. Nate Stanley's been knocked down more than Minnesota's defense has knocked down the opposing quarterback. Not great. That's 93rd nationally for Minnesota. 4th nationally is what Ohio State ranks with those 22 sacks. Minnesota, I couldn't find any stats on their defensive touchdowns. I'm assuming either 1 or 0. Ohio State's defense has scored 3 touchdowns for their team. That's 3 touchdowns their offense didn't need to score to win those games. That's important. Total defense, Minnesota has given up 324.2 yards per game on average. 21st nationally. On paper, that's pretty good. Again, who they played. Ohio State, 365.2 yards per game they've given up. That's 56th nationally. Who they played. Looks pretty good. Now, this, these tidbits, it's kind of, I like it because it's interesting, because it teaches me and you, the viewers, something that you may not have known about some of these games. But the top stat tells you why Minnesota's history has not been on their side. Ohio State has beaten the Gophers 44 out of 51 tries with no ties. Ohio State's largest margin of victory, 69-18 in 1983, 4 years before I was born. Minnesota's largest margin of victory, 27-0 in 1949. Some of those players on those teams could have been World War II vets. It's a long time, Golden Gophers. Long time coming. Minnesota last won the Big Ten outright in 1927 under Coach Clarence Spears. I don't know much about Minnesota football lore, but I would imagine he's probably a legend. And he was a player, coach, and doctor, which I thought was pretty interesting. He was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1955 as a player. 2010, all Ohio State's wins were vacated. So, not to be crude here, Minnesota faithful, but you technically beat Ohio State in 2010 because they technically had no wins due to the football scandals following that season. I'm not going to get into those. Minnesota last beat Ohio State on the football field in 2000, 29-17 in Columbus. Little backstory, what was going on in the year 2000. Twitter and Facebook weren't around. Zuckerberg was probably still in Harvard, developing them. If I'm wrong about that, I apologize, but I don't believe they were around in 2000. MySpace was beginning to take shape, but social media wasn't really a thing yet. Last time the Golden Gophers beat Ohio State on the field. Minnesota last beat Ohio State in Minneapolis in 1981. 6 years before I was born, ladies and gentlemen. 6 years before I was born. I would imagine PJ Fleck probably wasn't born yet, because I don't think he's much older than I am. Think about that. Minnesota's head football coach was not alive the last time the Golden Gophers beat Ohio State in Minneapolis. Again, history can change. Let me go back to the Kentucky-Florida game again as a reference. Gopher fans is not hopeless. Now, keys to the game. What does Minnesota have to do to beat the juggernaut that is Ohio State? Well, they need to establish the run early in order to control that clock more effectively. Keep Ohio State's high-octane offense off the field. Convert third downs. Run that ball. Demoralize the Ohio State defense. That's what you got to do if you're Minnesota. Got to force Ohio State to quick 3-and-outs on off when you're on defense. Make that high-octane offense make mistakes. Put Dwayne Haskins on his rear end. Keep him uncomfortable in the pocket. If Penn State told you anything, have them teach you that if you hit this quarterback, he can make mistakes. You have to take advantage of him. You have to play discipline like you've been doing all year. Again, like I said towards the beginning of the video. Penalties, or your lack of penalties you've committed on average, can help you win this game. But you got to use them effectively. And you got to take advantage of the ones Ohio State makes. If Ohio State's on offense, you have to use that field position battle, or that field position they've given you. You got to get them off the field if they make mistakes on offense. And make them on defense, take advantage of it. Score. Get a touchdown when they commit a personal foul or something. And give you an automatic first down. Use that. Use their dog's mentality to your advantage. And play hungry. Remember, this is the game to make a statement. You haven't done it this year. You've lost to two teams that are the two best teams you played against. Maryland and Iowa. You lost to Floyd of Rosedale last game, for crying out loud. Be angry. Take it out on this Buckeye team. You don't spoil it. Get your high-profile win. Play hungry. For Ohio State. Really, Ohio State is the bigger, tougher, stronger, brute force of a team. They need to play like it. Establish that running game early to set up that high-powered passing game. Got to convert on third down, which they've done a good job of this year. 50% third down conversion percentage. Pretty much unstoppable, in my opinion, with that kind of a percentage. Got to control line of scrimmage on defense. As I said, you're the bigger team. Play like it. Hit Nate Stanley early and often. Force him into mistakes, which he has made this year, and take advantage. Play more discipline and reduce the penalties. Penalties can hurt you, even against a lesser opponent, as in Minnesota. Reduce the penalties. They can kill you. Execute your game plan on offense and keep Minnesota's defense on the field. Make Minnesota's defense tired. Force Minnesota's offense into making mistakes. Who do I pick? On paper, choice is obvious. Ohio State is ranked number 3. They played 2 ranked opponents. Beat both. Played those ranked opponents, arguably both on the road, although TCU was a neutral site, but it was in the state of Texas, so I count that as a road game. Minnesota, you've lost to the 2 best teams you played against. So like I said, on paper, cut and dry, 4-down conclusion. But what Minnesota has going for them that Ohio State doesn't. Minnesota's hungry. They're the extreme underdog. They got a young, hungry coach won his big, high-profile win to solidify him as a good, elite coach. He's a great motivator. Minnesota is going to be up for this game. The players know this Gopher team has not beaten Ohio State since most of them were born. So, who do I pick? I'm going to pick Ohio State 35-21. I don't think Minnesota is going to hold on to the ball. I think Ohio State will knock Nate Stanley on his rear end early and often. I think he'll make mistakes because he's going to get tired of not being knocked down. He's going to throw before he should. He's going to not throw when he should. They're going to turn the ball over. They're going to fumble, and they're going to throw picks. And Ohio State's going to take advantage of it. Ohio State's going to get a short field. They're going to take advantage of it. They're going to win 35-21. I don't think this game's going to be close because Minnesota is just not strong enough offensively or defensively. They have not played enough high-quality teams, and they haven't beaten the ones that they played. I'm speaking of Minnesota. Ohio State wins this game 35-21. That's what I pick. If you enjoyed this video, please like. If you did enjoy the video, please also share it. God knows my channel is small. You've seen my views. I would appreciate getting more only because I want to engage with you folks. I care about this stuff. I love football. I love the game and I love the Big Ten. If you folks love football as much as I do, you love hearing me talk, you love hearing me rant, please help me. Like it, subscribe. If you don't like it, unlike, let me know why. If you like it, let me know why. I'd like to make this channel better, but I'm not getting any feedback. I'd like feedback so I can improve the channel and improve your viewing experience. Again, thank you for stopping by. And until next time, this is Real Big Ten Football Talk +1 with Chris. Enjoy the weekend, folks.